Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation, a production of Empower Mississippi, where we believe every Mississippian can rise if we remove barriers to opportunity. I'm Grant Callen, founder and CEO, and today we're talking with a very special guest. He's an all-pro linebacker with the New Orleans Saints, who dat? And he's an incredible leader on and off the field. He has started all 12 games for the Saints this year and led the team with 75 tackles in one of the league's most feared defenses. A man recognized for his service off the field, he won the prestigious Bart Starr Award this year, which is given to one player in the NFL who best exemplifies outstanding character and leadership in the home, on the field, and in the community. And he was a Saints nominee for the Walter Payton 2020 Man of the Year Award. And last but not least, he's a Mississippi native from Brandon. Demario Davis, welcome to the conversation.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have this conversation. Today, we're talking about criminal justice reform, a topic you have been a big advocate for. Demario, why is criminal justice so important to you?
I think criminal justice reform should be important to us all, even if, criminal justice system wasn't how it looked today. It's a function of our society. And so we as a whole, as human beings, should all be concerned with everything that's going on in our society because it's some way going to affect us, whether directly or indirectly. And I'm a big believer in you can tell a lot about a person and how they treat the least of these. And when you look at the criminal justice reform or criminal justice system, it's almost like, okay, this is in essence the bottom of our society, but they're still human beings. There's nothing that separates a person from at the top of society or the bottom of society, except maybe some decisions or it could be fate or luck, a lot of different things. And so one decision could take you to the top of society and one decision could bring you to the bottom just like that. And I think that we all should be concerned. But even more so, if you look at how the criminal justice system is specifically designed and how it disproportionately affects Black and brown communities and how it disproportionately affects the poor. We always should be concerned about our poor. We all should be concerned about communities that are oppressed or have faced injustices. I just think that's what measures a human being and how you treat those that may have less than you. And so that's why it's important to me.
Well, so we mentioned you're from Brandon, but it wasn't a straight line from Brandon, Mississippi to the NFL. And you faced some significant obstacles to getting to where you are today. What were some of those obstacles?
Yeah, being born in Mississippi, born in Collins and raised in Brandon, living with a single mom all my life, not having a lot of positive male role models to look to each and every day. I feel I became more of a product of my environment and fell into a lot of things that that exist in those communities. So drugs, gangs, running the streets, doing all kind of stuff. It eventually got me expelled from school when I was in high school. Fortunately, the coach let me come back on the team. And even my freshman year, I experienced my freshman year in college. I experienced the criminal justice system. I went to jail for 3 days, and that's another major reason why I say like one decision could take you to the top of society, or one decision could take you to the bottom. And understanding how the criminal justice reform system or criminal justice system works today, understanding that 3 days in jail could have been the difference in my life had I not been on a college football team. And so, it's been a journey. It's been a journey by the grace of God, and I had some great people to pour into me in college. They helped me have perspective shift, helped me, learn more and grow in my faith. And learning to live for God and live for a mission that was bigger than myself. And all of that kind of plays a part in why I do what I do and how I move.
Well, so you got a second chance. Um, how would your life have been different if you hadn't had a second chance? Because there's a lot of people that haven't had a second chance.
Well, I got a couple of second chances, not just one. And um, in high school, when I got expelled from school, the initially the principals wanted to have me expelled from school for my sophomore year through my senior year. So that would have been no more football. So I wouldn't be where I am today. I almost lost my life on several occasions due to my own bad decisions. So that would have me where I'm not here today. Going to jail after my coach had just, I was stealing out of Walmart, and my coach had just gave a speech like the day before about not stealing. And so it was like direct insubordination to him. He didn't have to let me back on the team, so I could have lost my scholarship and, never had a chance to play. So I wouldn't, at least from on those standpoints, I wouldn't be the NFL player that I am today, for sure, understanding that you need the game in high school and college to make it. Also, had I not, in those 3 days in jail, had I not had a coach to come and bail me out, understanding how the cash bail system works, I didn't have that type of money. My mom didn't have that type of money, and who knows how long I would have stayed in jail had I had to stay there until my court date, which we know due to speedy trials and effectiveness that we're having in that arena. I could have spent 3 to 5 months in jail, which we know now psychologically affects human beings in a negative way.
Yeah.
And so now I'm spending 5 months in jail, 5 to 6, potentially 5 to 6 months in jail, and I haven't even been convicted of the crime yet. And so now at that point, my life definitely would have been different. And so but that's what people are facing every day. And that's why I want to try to be a voice to the voiceless.
So, how do we distinguish between those who are truly a threat to society, who need to be behind bars, and those that have either already served their time and are ready to give a second chance, or those that a lot of times we got people that are behind bars who have an addiction issue, and really, if we treated it like a medical issue instead of a criminal issue, um, we would never have the incarceration crisis that we're in today if we hadn't. So, how do we distinguish between those two categories of people?
Yeah, I think everything that we do in society, we mostly do in tiers, right? Even from the time a child enters grade school, we put them in tiers of levels of learning. We have the ones that's going to take time to learn. They're in a type of class. You're kind of your general uh, intellectual group is in the main classroom, and then the higher or the faster learnings are in accelerated programs. And so we know how to tier society. Well, it's the same when a crime is committed. We need to learn how to tier criminals or crime in more ways than just time. It's the only way we tier it is time, and sometimes we disproportionately handle that or misappropriate that. And so we need to look at it and understand when a crime happens, is this something that needs to be punished with jail time? If it's a non-violent offense, if it's a first-time offender, let's look at the situation and understand on the front end are other ways that we can build this person up and make sure that this doesn't happen again. That's ultimately the goal, is to prevent this from happening again. And so are there ways where it's drug related, right? Maybe a rehabilitation program would be better suited. Is it something that's mental and maybe psychological help or a social worker would be better at that situation? Is there different types of workshops that can be forced for this person to attend that they can grow their mind? We need to be looking at those things for specifically for the non-violent offenders and the first-time offenders in that area where it's like, it's a petty weed crime. It's a first-time offense with a drug of sorts. You know, so when you look at that, and then when we're talking about our violent offenders or something a little more serious, where it's like, okay, we need to protect society from this person, and we need to protect this person from themselves, and we're looking at time. okay, well, now we got to look at the institution of jails and how are we designing our jails? Because for a lot of ways, we can make jails a place of learning or a place of redirecting. We already have work programs that exist inside of jails, but we need to look at those. Are we making those work programs for free labor, or are we making those work programs to equip these people to be ready to walk back into society? Right? We need to look at, can we educate on the inside of jail? And then once people do their time in those jails that are reformative, once they get out, let's not continue to treat them like criminals.
Yeah, you make a great point. And you've talked a good bit in other conversations about Parchment. And I had the opportunity to tour Parchment a couple years ago. And here you have thousands of people behind bars. And it struck me that when you walk in, there's really only a couple hundred people that are in the work program where they're learning a trade or a skill. And those were the happiest, most productive people that were learning a trade, learning a skill, that are being prepared for what life's going to be like on the outside compared to the other people. The vast majority didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't even want to speak on Parchment. That place is so bad on so many levels, and it's really inhumane. Um, things going or what going on out there is. But in any instant, something that's going on that's going to be developing the mind, that's going to be developing the intellect, it's going to be developing the person, is going to be um, what's going to inspire that person to become better to go back into society. We often hear stories of people who enter jail and earn degrees, learn trades, and it that's what you hopefully happens inside of jail. A person's trajectory of life redirects. I'm a person that was headed down one path, and then my life was impacted, and it changed the trajectory of my life. Well, we can do that through the jail system and through our criminal justice system. A person commits a crime. Let's have a tiered system that's in place that's designed to change the trajectory of that person's life. Well, this decision doesn't happen no more. If they're a repeat offender and they're headed down a certain path, clearly, that we can have systems in place that's designed to read when this person enters the system and when they leave the system, which we're not doing a good job of helping people leave the system. Once they leave the system, we put a better person back into society, which helps our society as a whole. Because I think a lot of times people think that, tell somebody to go to jail. Well, if you're not paying attention to those jails, which we're not, and not correcting, you're actually making people worse and putting worse people in society, because those people don't stay in jail forever.
Yep.
It's not like, people go to jail for life for every single crime. So those people are going to get back out. And if you put them in an inhumane system, they're going to be worse off. And when they come out, it's going to make our society worse. And so that's the indirect result that we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, we talk about a lot. 90% of the people currently behind bars will one day be out. And it's in all of our interest that when they do come out, they are ready to become a better citizen than when they went in. And you hit on it. Like, the vast majority that go into prison come out worse than when they went in. And, a lot of times you hear people talk like, well, at least they're going to have the opportunity to dry out, or at least they're going to have the opportunity to get over their addiction. And we got more drugs inside of prison than out oftentimes. And so you don't have somebody come out who's done their time, ready to be reintegrated into society. They come out more addicted, more hardened as a criminal. And it's just a cycle which contributes to the high recidivism. How do we break that cycle?
Well, on one end, we need to make sure that we're not putting everybody inside the jail system, right? So if somebody commits a crime, that inside jail walls and the institutions that exist, that we're not just filling beds up with bodies, because that's going to be psychologically damaging to people who don't necessarily need that environment to change. And then for the ones that are in there, we have to look at these conditions. We have to move away from prisons as a form of, as a business model that's designed to earn people money, and figure out ways that we steward our tax dollars properly, and in a way that's helpful to our society, right? We need to have some type of accountability going on in the jails, and you have to give the people inside jail something to live for other than jail life and other than just surviving, right? Right now, a lot of people that are in there are probably on a means of just surviving day to day. And but if you give them something to live for, if you offer them education opportunities, if you offer them job development training, instead of just working for the prison, but uh, they're getting degrees or trades or learning trades that they know they'll be able to use when they get into reentry programs. That's going to give them a means to stay out of trouble, to want to get out, and to know they'll have a job on the other side. And so when you look at reentry, um, making sure that we provide avenues that people leaving the system can reintegrate into society, right? And so the people that are in the inside will know that there are real job opportunities for waiting on them on the other, on the other side, instead of just knowing that, well, what's the point of me getting a trade if I'm not going to be able to use it,
Yeah.
right? And so give them something to look for, because it's undeniable in some of the environments that these kids are raised in, they're going to hit the system. But what if the system is the place where their life can change? Now, when they go to jail, they're presented with more opportunities than they were presented with in their neighborhoods. They know they can get an education now, which they probably never thought that they could get. They know they can get a trade now, which they thought they never could get. And they know that there are going to be opportunities for them to continue education once they leave the jail. And they know they're going to be able to, or they'll know that they'll be able to get a job when they leave the jail. That's how you change the system. You give people hope and you don't have to worry about anything else.
But that first step is safety. And, a lot of the people that have gone to prison aren't coming out safe. And since December 29th of 2019, 120 inmates in Mississippi have died. And the U.S. Justice Department has begun an investigation. And there have been a lot of coverage of the prison crisis here. And there are some bills moving through the legislative process right now that would either on the front end make less people go into the system in the first place, or once you're there, we've got to reform the parole system so that you give people an opportunity to come up for parole, because there's a lot of people that under the current law will never have a chance at parole because of their current sentence. And that means there's no incentive for good behavior. There's no incentive for them to get an education and prepare for reintegrated into society because they're there for a long time. So I want to talk to you about the federal First Step Act. I know you were supportive of that. That has been a huge step on the federal level. Why did you support that legislation?
Oh, well, it was in its essence, in its name, the first step. I think it was the first step in the right direction in a lot of ways. Um, I think the overarching question is, how do we get less people behind bars? When you're number one in the world by far for incarceration rates, you have to figure out what all plays a part in that. And so it's on the front end, that's on the sentencing, how we're sentencing people who don't need to be sentenced to time. We're sentencing people too long for offenses, and then we're holding people too long that could be out. And so you're essentially cramming people into these spaces that already aren't sufficient to hold its number, and it's overcrowded. And so you end up with, I think, Mississippi is shining a light on an issue that's happening all over our country. And so when you say, it's a crisis or emergency going on in Mississippi, it's just a light on it. That crisis and
Yep.
emergency exists everywhere. Um, and when we're talking about fixing these issues, I think the thing that we're not talking about enough is that the change needs to happen expeditiously. We don't have time to wait, because those statistics, those are people. Those aren't numbers. Those are people. And every time a number is added to that count, that's a person. And I think we don't think about that all the time. That's somebody's son, that's somebody's father, that's somebody's husband, wife, or um, So it's somebody to somebody. And that's how we need to be thinking about change. Is it needs to happen expeditiously.
Well, let me close with this question. You mentioned Mississippi. You're a Mississippi guy, grew up here. I'm a Mississippi guy. Yet, and there's so much that I could celebrate about Mississippi, but our criminal justice system is not one of them. And we now have the second highest incarceration rate in the country, which means we lock up a higher percentage of our citizens than almost anywhere else in the world. Why do you think this challenge, I mean, it's not unique to Mississippi, but why is it so pronounced in Mississippi?
I think a lot of it has to do with, our history and our culture, and probably some of the things that we haven't done so well as a state. I think that plays a big part of it. Being in New Orleans and Louisiana, also seeing the highest incarceration in the country, and a lot of that is due to its history and culture and things that it hasn't done so well, particularly around race, and so. But the thing that always makes me proud to be a Mississippian is the hospitality and the way that we know how to treat one another, and the way that we know how to be genuine and care about people and those around us, um, whether they're family, whether they're friends, or whether we don't know them at all. We understand hospitality, we understand manners and how to treat one another. And so I think ideally it would be great for Mississippi, instead of being at the back of the charge, being at the front of the charge and leading the way in how to create a more equitable society, and how to care about all people, from the top to the bottom, the rich, the poor, white, black, blue, green, doesn't matter. And so if we can take some of our morals and manners and traditions and apply them to all areas, such as criminal justice reform, I think that Mississippi can easily go from the back to the front.
Mm. Well, I couldn't have said it better. Demario, thank you for being such a great ambassador for Mississippi. Thank you for using your platform for this critically important issue. And thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Hey, thank you, man. Be blessed.
You too.